Well, hi everyone, and a few interesting points about Joseph. Following on from what Ian said, I thought that some of these points might be of interest. As Ian indicated, Joseph was in fact a very talented but what we might call a precocious child, and some of us will have had experience of this type of youngster. They tend to be very able and not backwards and coming forwards, as we might say. Despite their abilities, they can get up your nose somewhat, and this seems very much to have been the case here. For example, there are cases such as child prodigies. For example, Mozart, who, if you have watched the film Amadeus, is portrayed very much in this way. However, there is also the possibility that, bearing in mind the number of sons Jacob had, that many of them saw him as a threat to their future position, and the dreams that he had obviously supported this. We have already discussed that this family was fractious, with sons from a number of mothers. The pecking order was probably contentious before Joseph even put his oar in. Certainly, I think this aspect is a possibility because what they then do to Joseph, firstly planning to kill him and then firmly getting rid, is quite serious and a decisive action. Jacob's blatant favoritism doesn't help, of course, any more than does the overindulgence of any parent. As Ian has said, the coat of many colours has imprinted itself on our minds, especially if we have experienced Andrew Lloyd Webber's wonderful creation in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. An interesting thought is that usually the coat in these productions is very rainbow-like, and the rainbow is symbolic of promise and future, as it has been during this COVID pandemic, not perhaps unconnected to Joseph's experience too. When Joseph gets to Egypt, we find he soon lands on his feet, being bought by Potiphar and gaining a very satisfactory position until his high moral standards cause him to fall foul of Potiphar's wife. We might find it strange that a slave could gain such a position, but our understanding of slavery is sometimes limited to the recent history of the African American experience. While obviously there have always been slaves in many societies, and some of them, for example, galley slaves, those who rowed the warships for the Egyptians, the Greeks and the Romans, amongst others, did suffer hard labour, it is also true that there are many examples of slaves who were not only very much comrades of their masters, but were emancipated by their masters and often had close friendships with them. We might say that the basic decency and brotherhood between people sometimes transcended the master-slave situation, and often the main difference, or the definition of a free man, was the rights that he had, the possibility of owning land, for example, and the possibility of becoming a citizen, such as a citizen of the Roman Empire. In the film Gladiator, for example, those fighting in the ring had been made slaves by conquest, but were so popular and successful that in some cases they too became free men. So in this context, Joseph's rise is not so strange. Also, of course, his personality and his faith helped him, both in Potiphar's household and again in prison, to rise above the ordinary, as the scriptures make clear in verses 21 to 24, to which Ian referred in his sermon. Indeed, those famous words of Rudyard Kipling spring to mind when we look at Joseph's predicament during the period of his incarceration, and I think they fit perfectly. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good, nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools, if you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings, nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distant run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and, which is more, you'll be a man, my son. But more than this, Joseph has faith that God has his times in his hand. And as Ian pointed out, importantly, we need to know the same. Whatever comes along, and we can consider whether things like COVID-19 pandemic is comparable with Joseph's suffering, but the Bible teaches that God has dominion, and our hope is accepting that and proceeding in faith. For his name's sake. Amen.